Oh, wait a minute. The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are an awakening center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, learning experience for all ages. Tonight, our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, and I are pleased to present the urgency of unity. But before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Greetings. Islam. So we're back.
Yes.
We're back. And we there's a lot of things going on that you were sharing with me and that you wanted to share with our viewers.
Yes, that harmonizes with the importance of our unity. First, Islam, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Salam, Vadimekum, Bon Abort. As we were talking earlier, Dr. J, of course, we never finish our conversations, really, because you're busy, I'm busy. However, the nature of, the importance or the urgency of unity, we've gotten collectively, when you actually study us sociologically, as a people, particularly in, say, the last 50 years or so, when it became more popular, not that it wasn't popular at all, but more popular, since around the era of, Noble Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Il Malik, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brother Clarence, and others who apparently were doing heavy work to bring our people together on a more geopolitical level, while geopolitics as a general subject was not pushed. These particular liberators for humanity have made more what you call obvious effort to liberate our people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the nature of all of their operations are, in fact, geopolitical. But what you find, in order for them to find favor with our people, different ones would often skirt it and pretty much deal with the symptoms, and some would deal with organizational structure for unity. But essentially, when it still boils down to the reality they were all dealing with the corruption of our people being approaching emotional structures of social engineering and viewing the political realm from that perspective. At most, it pretty much excluded us. So we still looked at, generally, when you study our people, they're still waiting for the hybrid European to do some political act to liberate them from the pains and the corruption of colonial operations. And logically, it's sort of like asking a snake to remove his venom that he put in you, and of course it goes from generation to generation. And what has happened is that our people have been so abused and traumatized that the reflections of that trauma has become the culture. And I think a lot of our people have not looked at it. And so we have a difficult time communicating with the people in a realistic geopolitical venue, because we always jump back to that psychological defense mechanism due to the trauma that most of us don't know that we have. And so again, when you do research and study us sociologically, you can see that we spend more time celebrating men and women who've been working for the liberation than actually paying attention to what they presented. Information.
Yeah. Just before we go any further, though, for those of you who may not know what geopolitical or geopolitics is, so politics deals with the study, or it says, or the influence of such factors as geography, economics, and demography on the politics, especially foreign policy and of a state. And Grand Sheik, you and I were talking about how too few of us don't see ourselves on the larger foreign. We don't see our involvement. We don't know
with the human family. That's really what it is.
Yeah, on the ground. So it's happening over there. It's happening with them, but we don't. Somehow we're in this by ourselves lane of.
We always look at ourselves in a vacuum. And this is where, because most of us are constantly, how do you say, how would you say, soothing our trauma. And much of that's referred to under the Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach phenotype structure system that was adopted into the social structure via the United States Corporation trustees. And we look at it as racism and prejudice. And that has been a cover, also a psychological comforter for us, even though it's damaging. And that's pretty much where it's become traditionally accepted that whenever you try to communicate with the Asiatics of the West, particularly, it's been contaminating the rest of the world. But for the most part, at North America, the contamination is so strong that that's a social reality. But that paradigm is actually the results of part of the social engineering that is part of the trauma that keeps us from looking at the real world or coming out of our shells, that we're in. And then covering those shells with our different versions of what we accept religion to be. And the social politics dealing with us as a body politic, from those who are jurisdictionally ruling, right? They will promote things that support, whether it's tax or some other, what you call alleviate type legislation, to encourage us to remain in that kind of mentality. Which is also why most people, when they're actually doing research, the more and more research they do, the more and more they're willing to dump what they consider or what they've been told is religion, because they recognize it's actually toxic. But also, if they did more research, they would also recognize that our people have never really been given religion. We no different than, we have this corrupt idea of what religion is, the same way we've had a corrupt idea of what money is.
Okay.
The same way we've had a corrupt idea of what education is.
Right.
But yet the general consensus is that the general public knows each one of these subjects to be what it is as presented generally. And then they're trained, that includes all of us, to express or confess their version of what was given to them in the name of these things, not knowing that all of them have been weaponized, all of them. And those are the major three major subject areas that are used to control occupied people, subjugated people, and particularly the Aboriginal peoples who have been colonized all over the world. And the pattern has not ever changed. And one of the things when you do research, you'll recognize that in order for the people to not, start studying themselves and examining what is the cause that creates the effect that has become what we call culture, they will change the names in order to make us think that things ended. No different than when you analyze what manumission is
versus
as an
emancipation
and liberation,
yeah,
and all of these things, right? And then the 14th Amendment, civil rights, all of these things are social engineering projections of creating the false paradigm of our people here being liberated. And so no different than, so rather than them talk about, as we talked about earlier before, about the Bureau of Refugees and Abandoned Lands, etc., and the concept with the people is that social engineering went away, right? And what they have called, and it's qualified, slavery ended 1865. But when they changed it to the 14th Amendment, the assumption, and remember, that's the same thing.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's bureaucratized, meaning better organized, and made into legal process, disguised as law under a color of law. And it's the same thing, never ended, reinforced, expanded, but the concept of most of our people is that it ended.
But I remember a few years back, and I'm not sure exactly how many years ago it was, but there was a big push throughout the melanated or the so-called Black community about some there was going to be the expiration of their rights, with if they didn't have they didn't renew, what was it, had to do with the 14th Amendment. And they were pushing this thing that this thing it's going to end soon. And I'm thinking, and then what? You think you're what happens, because you're still not.
That gave them a goal. See how they now let's do this from a social engineering. Because remember, when you're looking at social engineering, as a reminder for everyone who's listening, you've got to comprehend, or you have to know, that those who are governing approach the human organism with the same mechanical and electrical perspective of a machine, an organic machine, absent from the perspective of engineering, of them interjecting their emotions in the matter, while taking your emotions as a component, not unlike current and currency. No different the way that our people have been trained, and it's one of the difficult things to do is, if you speak to most of our people under the engineering, they think that currency is money. And if you're trying to solve some aspect of the economic dilemma that has pretty much destroyed our families, etc., right? You'll find it difficult to have an intelligent conversation with them, because you can't convince them that they don't have money. They think it's your present opinion of how you see things that's counter to reality. So it is not unlike, and this is the difficulty that many have had, back to some of those men that I've mentioned to you, who have been presenting a geopolitical angle of view that has been pretty much kept from our people in order for us to take control of our estate. And this is even back to our people not even understanding that the issue is estate and trust, you know. And so these things, having not been taught to our people logically by the occupiers, because it's not in their interest, but by it not being taught to our people in general by many of the people who we've accepted among ourselves as leaders. And the closest ones to that, but one who was solid to that, was Sheik Sharif Abdul Ali, Noble Drew Ali, who definitely went there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who went there to a limit, and because of his relationship to national principles, because if you don't fix the national principle and the nativity principle, you can't fix the heritability principle. And of course, as soon as you go there, our people have been engineered and trained to identify themselves by their quote unquote beliefs, their religious bent, more than pedigree or bloodline, which created a buffer for the engineers. But that was not a circumstance or happenstance. That was part of the design.
I think, though, Grand Sheik, that it may be hard for some to fathom that there is actually centralized planning that has gone on for centuries, working to, like I said, manage the social change, to guide it in the direction and in the manner in which they've planned it to go. It's like, okay, we see 100 years from now, or 1,000, they even thought 1,000-year plan, you know?
Yeah.
So they will have generational succession to take over, or to continue rather, the social engineering and the planning that has been in place. And maybe they tweak it because now we've moved.
So you think the root ended? This is why it's important from their position to rename. You know, not unlike those who know the social engineering, for the most part, know that the civil rights period was a reinforcement of the 14th Amendment, if when understood would be rejected, which was accepted after those who thought the manumission, that they figured that out, was a transfer of the chattel to the Board of Trustees of the Circle Church and Chancery, known as the U.S. Congress. And then a modification of the Emancipation Proclamation twice, and then they dumped Lincoln, got rid of Lincoln. And the presentment in what they call education about the circumstance of the subjugation of the people, they give one Supreme Court, highest court in the land, rendition of the concept of the liberation with the Dred Scott case, 1857, and avoid the William Dungy case, 1854, which is more direct and more pertinent to what the concept need to be with the people relative to clarity on what is the matter of them even declaring the case with Dred Scott, though morally, arguably founded, but that his status was dead, and the execution and dispensation was plaintiff in error. And so, because the people are not aware of pedigree, they look at the Dred Scott case, which is most presented by the scholars, as an attitude under the version of the Carlos Linnaeus mentality, racism rejection, including the political geopolitics of the classification of citizenship, garnering or being worthy of certain political protections, with the Supreme Court declaring persons of, Asiatic African descent could not be U.S. citizens, which they couldn't be. But the drive of the people was trying to be.
But when you say that couldn't be, which was a good thing, because we're not. But people were fighting to be what they should not have been anyway.
Therefore, the false goals. See, they keep setting new goals.
It's like when you say you can't be something or have something, you want the people want it.
They're controlling the narrative, and the narrative is always behind the reality curve or behind the reality of human progression in social structures, including whether economic or any other political venue. As an example, give you as an example, when as we've talking regularly, most of the people, and many of them having accepted degrees from what they refer to as education.
Mm-hmm.
And you know it from your experience of talking to people from other countries and people from across the land here who from time to time ask questions about or joining different organizations to so-called try to deal with some of the trauma induced upon our children that we have suffered and had not yet come out of. And we're struggling to see that our children and offspring don't go through the same thing, right? Yet they have never read the philosophy page of the General Education Board, as we mentioned before. But if they knew that, most of them would have redirected their energies and their outputs and their supports in order to change the outcomes of what most of us are complaining about or working against, but not knowing that the 1902 Declaration, right, of the philosophy for the animal husbandry was actually a reflection of the what they call the Great Christian book burnings. So the name change of the same operations, and so the people think it ended. Mm-hmm. And so they faithfully go to this institution that they think was put in place to make them erudite to the social structure, and therefore it would have ended their social economic problems long as they worked hard, right, and paid for it. And yet it's the same paradigm, but it's a different name. No different than a continuation of the Unum Sanctum operations is the Trading with the Enemy Act, the Buck Act, mm-hmm. the Negro Act are all part of the Christian Black Code, 1724. Part of Codes Noir, 1620. But all of these are the same operations given different names in order for them to control the narrative that the trauma paradigm, structural engineering ended.
So when you go back to the racism, the fact that many cry racism, you have to look at the fact that if you've spoken to anyone who's come over here, say from some of the countries over in Africa, some of those African nations, and part of what you'll hear is in the indoctrination into U.S. citizenship, there's included a propaganda, mm-hmm. large propaganda piece,
narrative
against those of us who are the Aboriginal people of this land, and so they're actually shown videos to say, you know how you say, watch out for them, mm-hmm. and they do this and they mm-hmm. that, and then they give them many of them the status of being white. So that in and of itself lets you know it has nothing to do with the color of your skin.
All right.
But the status that you have, and they'd rather let you have that white status coming in from here and then have you as an ally against us.
And look at this. This is the other thing, right with what you're saying. It is known around the world that status exists until you're put in servitude. See, this is what our people don't get here. They're not giving that to them. It exists with nationals. in around the world. This is why, a lot of times when we're having these conversations, Dr. G, and we'll go to jurisprudence, and we continuously tell the people, we'll give them certain lists of things to go to law books of ancient and modern jurisprudence to clear their mind. It's new to their ears, but it's not new to the world. And so certain things, when people, this is what frustrates a lot of Asiatics and Africans when they come to America and they look at us as being, brothers, distant brothers from what, however it may be, or even some of our people go to the other side, they want to go to the motherland, that paradigm. And once they do find, they're often rejected by the people there. And it's really because of the dead culture, but they don't know that. They don't know that. They think that they don't like us and we expected them to. After all, we're brothers, but we come with that trauma that we think is reality. And what occurs is also with the contamination of the demos system of Kyklos that they call the democracy, which is mob rule. That's what it means. Mob rule. That's exactly what it means. Not opinion, what it means. Our people go to other jurisdictions with that mentality because we've been groomed in it. So we become abrasive, thinking that we're doing someone a favor, Americanizing them, not knowing that the whole psychosis of Americanization ain't even the European. He uses that to cover his germs or his contamination, so that when the people get mad, they reject America and Americans as being the corruptors when we're not and the land isn't. It's the hybrid Europeans that are veiled behind our name. We allow it because we have assumed that they're Americans. And so that's layering. And this is back to what I'm saying earlier, and I'm reinforcing the art and the importance of maintaining de facto government that confuses our people. They keep getting confused. Why is it that we, quote unquote, our people, inclusive of others, keep voting for the Democratic Party, then the Republican Party, then the Democratic Party, then the Republican Party, and they never understand that we're somebody. They never seem to understand that we have feelings, and that's our concept. Now, they're controlling the narrative. They know that these people don't know anything about the Whiggamore Party, and that you're dealing with cotton wigs and conscience wigs, and that's who they really are, right? And our people are still seeking the liberation that they themselves teach their children was given to them with the manumission in the 1800s. Paradigm, conflicting paradigm, total opposites. So we've been protecting the delusions and illusions of wishes and wannabe and prayers and someday that has never come. And we're still in the same jurisdiction, which is a negative. And finding that the poisons of the toxins not only didn't go away, that the people have been steeped in the trauma for so many generations that has become the culture.
It becomes what they call, and I want to give the brother the credit because I read his book and had him on my show years ago when I was in local TV, but he talked about self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's right.
And that's what it's almost as if, once the ball, so to speak, is put into play, it'll go on and on and on and on and on by itself. It'll just self, generate. They don't have to do anything. Now it's in motion.
Yes. Even what you had said many times, the Pavlovian psychosis. And that's still controlling the narrative until the subject, the mechanism takes up the narrative for self, which is why, even and over the years, as we've talked, Dr. J, which is also why, from when you're looking at this objectively, from social engineering, because you got to look at it mechanically to fix it.
Right.
You can't, if you start interjecting your emotions, you fix nothing. And it's not unlike a doctor understanding that if you're dealing with an injured patient, you can't start crying because you see blood, or you can, I can't stand it, and you go stand in the corner and the patient's on the table, and then feeling that if you don't show emotions, they think you lacking compassion. That's why it takes strong men and women to deal with reality. Truthfully,
we have to learn how to guard our energies and our empathy, because too many times the work that you do and that I do and others like us do, we are so absorbed in other people's energy, other people's issues, that it begins not only to interfere with our own growth and development, but our ability to help others, because now we've got to clear this stuff. And the bottom line is, you wish you had a magic wand, and every time somebody had a situation, you go bing, and there's corrected. But it takes more than that, and it takes an internal, I believe, a belief in, or knowledge. I don't want to use the word belief, in oneself.
You got to deal with the knowledge
in oneself.
Look let's examine the social engineering, because you hit it. The capacity for the active being to not suppress or ignore, but to recognize the limits of emotions and deal with knowledge absent of belief. Distinguished from those who are engineered, who don't know what controlling the narrative means, have been trained that beliefs equal knowledge and have never separated them. Which guarantees them to remain in the basket or under the control. And this is back to, one of the social engineering paradigms that they've promoted, that if you demand from a people continuously that you are the authority, after a while they'll give it to you. That's factually part of the engineering. That's not an analysis. That's written. They've said that. When you study that, this is again why, like say for instance, you can have a child, right? So now we're dealing with the concentrated naturalization principle of civic projected instruction to have standing as quote unquote citizen in the jurisdiction operative here at North America, right? And they'll train children from early age, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of preposition, the United States of preposition, America, and to the republic for which it standing, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then turn around and teach their parents to teach them to vote for the democracy. Clear contradiction, undisputably contradiction, undisputable political opposites, and yet in the war manual, they tell you what the republic means, and they tell you what democracy means. And the treaties and constitution for the United States operating on the land in contract, in harmony with treaty, constitution, and international law principles, the trustees that hold office take solemn oath. It's called official solemn oath to that principle. The execution is democracy, which is mob rule, and the political platform set up for what you call solid, or what you call established operations, 1871. Not secret, which you already know, Organic Act of Congress, 1871, February 2nd. Now, that's been operative. Then you study the geopolitics dealing with the diversity issue of the Aboriginal and indigenous people here who are secured within the law, right? The established, what is known as the established law, Constitution and Treaty, Article 6, Article 3, Article 4, Section 4, Article 6 in its entirety, Article 3, Section 1, Section 2, Article 1, Section 10. Established law, right? And yet, if you present Article 1, Section 10 to most of the people who are seeking the liberation, it contradicts what we've been living. It's not that it contradicts it. Those who've been ruling contradict it, and thus contradict us. Now, remember 7 articles, 10 Bill of Rights. It's not complex. We'll ignore that as if it doesn't exist, because those who have been jurisdictionally ruling have been maintaining a de facto platform, not unknown, operating under color of law, not unknown, operating under color of law jurisdictions, not unknown, but not observed because it makes people uncomfortable. So they'd rather lean on emotions and argue morals and ethics, and those who are governing project or control the narrative on morals and ethics, when their operations is moral and ethics are out the door. The issue is to win and to use de facto platform in order to project.
But let's talk about how we, as a body politic, which it doesn't seem like we are really, because we're so divided, because we are talking about unity, how we've come to be in such a divisive state, how we've come to be so scattered and torn asunder.
The schism. Now, let me give you an answer.
Okay, please.
This is what all people, all Asiatics or European operatives know, right? And write this down for those of you who are scholars. Many of you already know this. And this is part of the dilemma that's facing the people right now, right? There. And you'd wonder why I already had this. Why? Because in the conversation, it would have to come up if you're talking about it. However, the answer that professors know, that those with degrees know, that those in secret societies know, that adepts know, that anthropologists know, is not what's been taught to the public. Now, why again? Manassas, Manasses. Manassas is the lost tribe of Israel. This lost tribe comprised the English people and the white people of the USA and Australia. The French and the so-called Jewish people plus the quote unquote Negro of the USA, including Muslims and Muslims. All of this divided people are idolatry, God worshippers of mysticism and mythology. They oppose the Moabite and more science of the 12 signs of the zodiac as a result of their beliefs in mythology, isms, and idol god worship. The truth needs no apology, so fear ye not. If you are not ready for the truth, close this book and don't read any further. Now, that's 360 degrees, right? Now, you know, in the operations here, and most of the people that are given positions of authority that are in political realm or in the priesthood get 33 degrees, 33 and a third, right? That statement is 360. Now, look at the de facto operatives. Those who really know the real human condition will always tell the people, we know that we have problems, right?
Mhm.
But don't lean or don't play the race card.
Mhm.
Examine what it really is. But most of them couldn't tell you about Carlos Linnaeus or Blumenbach because they don't know that's the origin. That's 1700. Their training is that's from the beginning of human civilization.
Mhm.
No different than when they're talking these social problems paradigm. They keep saying the code system, black and white, as if it didn't start in the 1854 officially and unofficially in the 1600s. It don't go beyond that. But yet, every time they will talk history, they will interject the smoke paradigm of the social engineering, which this is back to what you said earlier. The trauma has become the culture. And people who, in the name of scholarship, knowing this, will rationalize why not to tell the truth because the people will reject you and you can't talk to them. And so therefore, well, we're going to call them black anyway because that's what they're used to. Right? Now, how many times, Dr. G, as an example, and I'm not beating anyone off the crosshead. We're just examining the social engineering and looking at from an engineering mechanism why the people don't recognize the schism and schisms that keep us divided because they don't recognize that they've been engineered. And when shown the evidence, they're looking at it emotionally that it goes against their beliefs, which they've been trained equals knowledge.
And their indoctrination.
But the indoctrination comes from the controlling the narrative.
Right.
And the philosophy page, which means none of this stuff is hidden. It's just, it takes a strong man or woman to do research, to examine things, and to accept that they were wrong. And to be willing to cast off falsehood once it's discovered. No different than a lot of times when we're having these conversations about the importance of unity with our people, right? And sometimes we're out dealing with other people and we get involved in other organizations because we're always looking for unity. And as soon as you tell these people they're not black, all of a sudden their ears close up. You're not part of the club. They're tolerating you. And they're talking about your beliefs versus their beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet you can take them to a Charles Dictionary and show them. And how many times have we done that? How many times? To boring redundancy. However, real world, in order for such people to have descendability in law, we're not even talking about having a rational conversation, that the appropriate persona status must be in place. And not emotionally, but in fact. Why? Because the quote unquote organic individual, not individual by itself, organic individual must be capable of confessing their own in law without you giving them a crutch or a cane. And it must be done, body language, without hesitation, with confidence, without anger, and affirmatively. Now,
how about people though? How about if we move further, and I'm just trying to, because I know you want to,
because we're trying to build
you like
unity.
to get into history. I also want to talk about the fact that, and maybe I'll wait for the last hour to do it. So let me let you go, and then I'll interject this part because it ties into something else. Because we when you talk about how many different views or perspectives there are, even on the subject of our lack of unity, even on the subject of our lack of diversity and our lack and unwillingness in some form or fashion to come together and on a common ground or on something, a commonality,
yes,
that transcends all of the differences, so that we begin to
and the
build on a solid foundation.
Because remember, most of the quote unquote differences are founded in illusions.
True.
So you're still coming out of illusion.
I saw a little promo of a little modern European girl, and she apparently had gone to the store to purchase a doll. And when she got to the register, she had a melanated doll, and the cashier asked her, basically, are you going to a birthday party? So her assumption was that if she bought a melanated doll, she was given it as a gift, and she said no. She said no, she wasn't, and her mother said no, this is a gift for her. I let her pick what she wanted for something she had done right. And so she said to the cashier, wanted to know, well, there are other dolls back there that look more like you. And she told the little girl, she says, why did you pick that one? And she said, well, and this doll was dressed like a doctor. They had a doctor coat, something. And she said, well, she's a doctor. The little girl said, I'm a doctor. She's smart or something. I'm smart, and she's beautiful and I'm beautiful, and that's why I picked her. So this was, the woman, the cashier, wanted to put in a difference. Why would you, as a and probably white child, want a black doll? And the little girl looked at the doll more from the commonality. She apparently wanted to be a doctor.
It never dawned on a child, right? It must be taught the paradigm.
There you go.
The social engineering, because remember the phenotype paradigm. Now you're going back to Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach. Now the child don't know that, right? Politicians who promote that paradigm know that, but they know it's weaponized and political. But by their instructions, it's not to be taught in school, because the control paradigm for the people is that this is from the beginning of civilization, i.e., God created black and white type thing, not Carlos Linnaeus. Because remember, even the paradigm system, Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach, was not necessarily weaponized by them. They were just doing biological, anthropological, and not a naturalist biological examination of humanity. However, the Board of Trustees of the Circle Church and Chancery, everything that comes through what you would call the institutions are consciously, through think tanks, weaponized to enforce unum sanctum, i.e. the U.S. This is why they have think tanks and why they keep the separate, structured, quote unquote, secret societies. But relative to conquest motive, this is why the token crown, they would call it in their different orders, tiara sol. They call it, they'll just say tiara, right? Where the Moorish fez, that our people see, whether they're looking at Mama's Parade or they see J. Edgar Hoover or the different presidents in chambers when they go to Washington, D.C., or they notice that the president of Mexico in the 1800s, he's got a Moorish fez, and people who don't know the reality of the anthropology here keep looking, well, why would that Mexican president of Mexico in the 1800s, why they got fezzes on? They ain't Moors. Yes, they are. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But because of the socialization, they're looking, oh, they're Mexicans, so therefore they're not Al-Moroccans. We're just Americans under the United States jurisdiction. So they do things around the world like they're the Americans and nobody else in America is Americans. But that's part of socialization. It is known, it is seen, it is obvious, but it's accepted. Now, what does that do? What is the effect? No different than from an engineering perspective. What is the effect when you change the magnetic current in an electrical system? You can learn to encompass that and turn, or what you call bend or alter signals. That principle is used in what you call changing stations and radios. If you understand, even with your older speakers, you'll see they have a magnet there.
But you know what? We are electrical systems.
Of course.
We are human batteries.
Now, back to now.
I digress.
Stay on point.
I digress.
No. Express that, because that's very important. Because when you stated that for that split second, and then you start moving away from it, you're looking proper.
Mm-hmm.
When you start removing the emotions or the general accepted concept, you start looking at the organic being for what it actually is.
Right.
It's an electrical system. The nervous system is an electrical system. If you're going to fix it, if it's broken, you must look at it from a mechanical perspective and not that's my aunt. And don't touch her heart. Don't pound on her heart if it stops. But when you're looking at it from a mechanical perspective, you do what? You try to jump charge it. Exactly. Now, those who are unable to look at things objectively in the social engineering, not unlike mechanical engineering, are more likely to fail. If you're the ones who control the narrative, now you understand the 6 major outputs of information is controlled by a controlled body of Cancerians calling themselves something that they're not. All of this is known. They control the banks. The people think it's money. They know it's private commercial paper. It's documented in congressional records. It's private commercial paper. It's documented on the floor of the House of Representatives that it's not money. Bluntly, that currency is not money. Federal Reserve notes are not money. That they are voucher systems and that they are closed accounts upon which blank checks or dead checks are written. We're talking, that's not opinion, that's documented. We've shared that for over 30 years with these people, and they'll still argue money. Now, point is that state of mind exists. If you're trying to change the economic condition of these people, until they get real and sincere with that truth that they've learned, they're in the basket. You know, the crab's in the basket, even though they have the information. It is not unlike like it's always been said, a wealthy man in the desert is poor with suitcase full of money, a suitcase full of Federal Reserve notes. Mm-hmm. And the one who has water from the earth is wealthy. Yeah. Not unlike what's happening right now that people are not aware of in general, as we've been telling them for forever, right? And what is at part of the root of the geopolitics that reinforce the schism operations that's beginning to fail right now. And we've been telling people the last 10 to 12 years that the nations, N-A-T-I-O-N-S, nations nativity, we're going to stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds. And the food feedback loop would break. And so their own stuff was going to feed back to them. Now, of course, people got bored with us saying that because that's the truth. Now, cause and effect. All the economic goals of the people, right? I'm going to get a new car next year. They was trading cars in every 3 years and stuff like that, right? Now that is an established reality, right? Those who understand the engineering could already project what was going to happen, right? Those who don't recognize it and are looking at things emotionally, they get caught in the loop, right? So those who know the social engineering can safely and confidently say what I've been saying to you. We've talked here at the House of Reawakening Minds for the last couple of years. Don't buy no new houses. If you have a house, and remember, it's a deed or a mortgage, it's not yours, you're a tenant. However, if you're the steward, until we think certain things can change, because that's determined by the people, right? Add to it, build on it, fix it up. Don't get into new debt, right? Now, so I've said it a few years ago, and I'm saying it again. So in the next coming months, with weeks, what we talked about last year, what's happening right now, and most people aren't even aware. All of the banks are not issuing any large at all, and in some places, none at all, loans on any new cars. So what does that mean shortly? Not next year. Before this year out,
surplus of cars.
Before this year is out, not only are a lot of people in the middle class going to lose their jobs, that include the support systems and the secondary parts and suppliers for these venues, right? You're going to see car companies trying to merge that you call legacy, right? Car companies to survive. Forget anything new coming in unless the new comes in with latest technology and don't have the burden of what you call legacy structures and bankings, because they're collapsing internally. None of them are solvent. So that disallows them to continue to control the narrative. Now, this is back to us. Knowing that that's the case, intelligence says to put our quote unquote appearances or illusions of difference aside and come to support each other for real, not because it's traditional that we've got to get together, have meetings every year and talk about unity, but never really mean it. It's just that part of the Afro-Indigenous concept of we need unity, and everybody sounds good and talk about Rosa Parks and everybody else and claps and pats each other on the back and talk about the blackness of the melanin of the universe, of the pyramids, of the greatness of the queenship and the gods of kings, and don't even know the jurisdictions that these people use to run government. Do you understand? And we've gotten away with it because everybody's accepted, oh, wow, he said something really deep, because he said queen, and he said chief, and he said Sheik. And people who know that Shakun, chief, Sheik, all mean the same thing. In the different cultural areas and linguistics, it'll be used, and they think it's different. Because it's back to not even understanding culture, but professing to. Now, fine when we do it among ourselves. Why? Because ignorant people, you can tell them anything because they don't deal with facts. They deal with beliefs according to their training. And then the beliefs are schismed up. It's called secularism. And that creates the schism because that's what schism means. But them not knowing that this was a weapon. It wasn't a circumstance that just happened like, oh, it happened to rain today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we think. And so the people don't think when they look at the politics here, unum sanctum, bulla. Dum diversus bulla. Romanus Pontifex bulla, right? Sister QV Trust, 1666, bulla, which translates into 14th Amendment in these days. Yes, that's hundreds of years old. Different name, they thought it went away. Manumission, civil rights. They thought it went away. You know, and it's now the difference between scholars or like someone who's brought into what you call circle. Most people only know that church, the word church
Circle
means circle.
It's my open circle.
And the circle is the zodiac. And the architecture in masonry would reflect that. So you can go to any church, old temple, or synagogue, and you can start looking at the brickwork, the placement of the windows, placement of doors, the parapets, and you can see the geometry and you know its origin of one in cosmology. Yet 90% of the people that go into them buildings and fund them are not even aware of that structure, what it's talking. Yet the scholars and the preachers do.
And
but not all of
they denounce it publicly.
Exactly. That's part of the schism operations. But I'm only saying that to say this, Dr. G, and it's not to be boring or redundant. How certain things are said, you know how, and it come back to this thing, and people repeat it, but they don't take it serious. And it says, know you the truth, and the truth will make you free.
Mm-hmm.
And people repeat it because everybody says it. But as simple as that, that's part of cure. You know, it's sort of like people have been given the cure, but they don't take it serious because it's part of the training. Because it was taken in the mentality of belief and not in the mentality of knowledge. The receiver does not seek knowledge. The receiver only seeks to show themselves as a dedicated believer, an image which becomes the illusion. But they don't see the illusion because they assume that the ritual or the show is the reality. The being is the reality, not the show.
This is what people like Rod Hayes and others will call the conjure.
Of course.
And this is, you know, when he talks about a conjure, we are under a spell.
Yes.
We are under a spell that has at its root the agenda to divide and conquer.
Slow down, because we're going now. This is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So continue. See, the agenda must be examined. The controller of the agenda and the creator of the agenda must be examined, and it must be shared with the one whose spell must be broken so that you can pull the curtain. Because until they see mm-hmm. for themselves, they remain in belief, or what is known as blind fiat.
Okay.
Blind fiat becomes for them blind faith.
Okay.
Which means you are presenting the reality for viewing, whether remote or direct, and psychologically they're holding on to the narrative because they're trying to protect it. Why? Because it is part of their accepted beliefs that they have been trained through the weaponry of social engineering equals knowledge. And that has never been separated for them by the priesthood, though the priesthood, for the most part, will have degrees, ecclesiastical degrees, knowing that this governance is ecclesiastical in a Gnostic construct,
Absolutely.
not in a belief construct.
Absolutely. I was talking to a sister a few weeks ago. I'm trying to get her on the show. She has she knows this Bible to the extent that every time a situation comes up, she's able to find within the Bible the ecclesiastical remedy that if she has to, make an appearance somewhere that they've invited her to, she comes from an ecclesiastical standpoint. And in most cases, she defeats them. They won't override their own stuff if you know it. If you know it.
So now you're talking, see now, let's look at this.
Okay.
They won't override their own stuff. Now, pay attention to that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Fact. It's not their stuff.
Yeah. When I say stuff, I'm talking about.
No. I want you to examine.
Right. Let me tell you what I mean when I say stuff.
Oh, I know what you meant. But
well, just in case you didn't, right. Let me clarify.
For the listeners.
When I say their stuff, I'm talking about I'm gonna say it like that, the shit they create, the different, the schism, the legalities that they try to tie us up in. If you come with an ecclesiastical response,
because that's what they're operating
in, they don't deny you the relief you seek. But when you come with the things that they're happy for, all of these different points of views,
because that's the schism.
I know that.
See, the schisms have root in what you call sectalism. What are sectalism? What? The thousands of versions of what they call Christianity. I said what they call Christianity. Mm-hmm. What they call Christianity. Mm-hmm. Upon examination, we're not talking about deep. People know that's Constantinism.
Right.
Masked as Christianity. Now it's fact, right?
Right.
Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. That's the official name. Now, yet how many people would close their ears as soon as you're trying to break the spell because they consider themselves a part of it and think that you're attacking God, Jesus, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, the Bible, Quran, Torah, etc., and will immediately reject you out of hand. So there's nothing more to talk about, not knowing that pocket of psychosis that I just named is common among us and is part of the schism operations that keeps us from coming together and allows them to do what? Drain our energy and resources in the processes with their instrumentality of illusion interjected as a goal for us for gaining wealth. And no different than the known fact, right? It's, as an example, they give you an instrument, any instrument, and on the face of it says 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
Printed on the same paper, right? Which is comprised of actually cloth fiber and papyrus together, so it's durable. Same stuff, and then they remove the O's, and they put a 1 with an O. They put a 2 with an O. They put a 5 with an O, and they put a 1 with 2 O's. And the value is perceived, not real, perceived, because of what the numbers say. Now, so the receiver, if not understanding the system, thinks that that's money, that's a voucher, right? Now, and so it must be redeemed by one who either controls or holds value outside yourself. Now, because it's a voucher, they can literally, just by ens legis, right, change the value of that 100 to the 1 without touching anything in your pocket or even notifying you. And when you trade it, the effect of the absence or the deletion is there, you don't recognize because you don't see the wizard behind the curtain, and you think that you, because they control the narrative, have money and they're controlling the currency, electrical current in your body, the body, via an illusion, while the mind is on thinking money. They've just drained your energy, which would reflect in your wages, which would be taxed, which are not taxable, which means you would have to give service in order to receive the voucher, and it has no value whatsoever lest you pass it back through them, one of the 12 regencies, upon which the Inquisition Revenue Service officers, by duties and tax, would put a lien on it every time it moves, and it decreases at all times while you're looking at the numbers like this and giving your labor to acquire this with the assumption that it has a locked value without knowing that locked value. Now, Article 1, Section 10. Article 1, Section 10, Constitution for the United States, to which all of these trustees, the Congress, the senators, etc., right, all are bound, right, by solemn oath to support. No state shall do what? Emit bills of credit or make anything but gold or silver coin for payment of debt. It's right there. And they've convinced these people that they have money. Hold on. Now, on honor of the accepted illusion, assumed to be attached to reality, gold or silver coin, they don't, because of lack of training and also because of the schism ops, they don't know that Joachim Thaler, TH, right, is the root word for gold coin. From the gold coin comes dollar. So dollar means, in fact, gold coin. By weights, grams, measure. Prescribed in law, does not move. Now let's look at part of the social engineering, creating the schism. Even with people starting to find out some of them unmasking when you see people running around trying to claim the birth certificate, right? Even under ecclesiastic law. Not that some haven't done that. And as soon as they get to what you call conclusive ruling, they make such persons disappear. Why? Because they're rogue. However, the knowledge of that is important, but it's most supremely important when the person who knows that shares that with others, and the other shares it with others, which will bring the harmony that they're missing because they're in disharmony, in schism, which is why they don't come together.
Sure.
Which means they're under control of the spell of the schism. Therefore, they're disunited and easier to rule.
Right, of course.
Now, which is what's been going on. All right. Now, keep in mind when you look at that with the birth certificate issue. So most people, when they start discovering this, start looking at the birth certificate issue, then they start discovering the Sister QV trust. Right? With many of them not looking at the Sister QV Act 1666. Never even read it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Another time period. So they think this stuff just began. So they start looking at Roosevelt, right? And Skull and Bones, right? With the U.S. corporation company that they've been trained already is a country that they've been striving to be a part of, went bankrupt. And rather than take the people directly themselves, physically put them on an auction block, because the marriage certificate became dead because they fractionalized it. Because remember, it's still a bond. No different than the so-called dollar bill. But the people think they're different instruments. So they start arguing the birth certificate. They're going to capture this with ecclesiastical law. Right? Become the executor, which means now that means they know trust law. But in order to be a trustee, you must be what? Competent. And you must understand what? Lawful status of descendability, which is at the root of the capacity to have standing to make an argument to make the claim. All of these things are basically simple, Dr. G, but they're important for all bodies to be aware of, because automatically the unity of cause, the unity of need, the unity of direction automatically takes place by nature. The urgency of recognizing that you don't need to be convinced. Meaning, once you understand the nature of counterfeit, should anyone need to continue to argue with you for decades to argue what's real and what's fake? If you insist on supporting the fake and think that we're going to be successful just by having meetings and talk about how melanated we are, and therefore, and because we're the first people of the land, and therefore, and all of this stuff is under trust. It's how it operates. And it's not just something that has arisen or have arrived. This is the structure of civilization from immemorial. Also declared in what you would call constructed hierarchy. Preserved and stabilized by written or orally presented standard principle rules that are not to be violated. Why? Because principles step outside and remain outside of emotional banter. That's what stabilizes society. So those principles are called civics. And at the root of them are ecclesiastical principle canon law. And we're not talking about the canon gun, although that homonym has been presented for controlling the people, and they don't even say it. Right? So that means, and so I'm saying that to say this, Dr.
A
J.
thought just crossed my mind when you said that. When they say something that's been canonized, really what they're saying is been weaponized.
Exactly. Exactly. Now,
it's a softer way of saying he's been weaponized.
If we keep, and this is what we keep doing, Dr. G, study us. Because, see, in order to fix something, we've got to remove the ego. Most people are not willing to do that, which guarantees the schism lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the ego, and then the emotion is attached to the ego. So that keeps one in what you call the carnal realm.
Mm-hmm.
But we profess coming above the 3 degrees of the groin area, which is why they wear that apron. That apron is symbolic. Yeah, because remember, in the secret societies, when you see them wear that apron,
mm-hmm.
that apron represents the great leaf that you see in Adam hiding his shame.
Mm-hmm.
But why is the pyramid down? It means the lower realm. Right? So then you turn the pyramid up, and that's where you get Hex Alpha. That's why you have what is called Hex Alpha, or what they call the Star of Dawood, real Saba. And so they cover up Saba with Jew, and the people keep trying to be Jews when they're really Saba. But the rulers know that Jew is a cover-up for controlling Saba who don't know their Saba. See how the burial takes place? Now, it's called casting spells. But you already know that. But what I'm saying to you essentially is this. When people are told the truth and are afforded the truth and they reject the truth, the price is not to the one who delivers the message that is to be paid. It's to the principle of divinity or the divine spirit realm of our ancestors who do not tolerate that variable that we tolerate. This is why when you look at civilization and where people respect, right? We're not talking about people that get into the holy roly about this. When you look at civilization, as an example, this is another one. There's a man that is worldwide known, and we're not talking about people accepting him or not accepting him. We're just talking about the facts. The facts, right? Means hot dogs are popular whether you eat them or not. Like that. That's minor. Who is the most famous, most accepted, most known? We're not talking about accepting or rejecting him. We're just talking about the reality. More, which is a short name used modern time, ancient name Moabite, in the world and promoted by many who claim belief, many who reject, but many who respect, and many who avoid, but the world acknowledges being in some ways the most famous, past and present, more of all time. They even covered up or codified his attribute.
I want to say Benjamin Banneker, but I want to say.
All right, you say Benjamin Banneker. All right, the most famous Moor,
George Washington.
That's known. Now watch, I'm going to show you how spells are cast. Jesus of Nazareth.
Oh, okay. Maybe, yeah, that's
not okay. Well, yes.
Well,
yes.
Yeshua.
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm saying
Yeshua ben Joseph.
How things are in your face, right? And people assume another thing that upon lightweight research is proven to be another thing, and it is well known, yet the falsehood perspective is established, accepted, promoted, while they know it's not the truth.
So I'm looking at.
Wait a minute, let me finish because I'm presenting this not just for you, for them, because you're going to respond from the people, right? Because remember, we're having a loose conversation.
Okay.
Yet, this same man, the same Moor, right? If you say, well, the matriarchy, well, who's his mother? And who's his mother's mother? His mother's mother is named Ruth. Ruth the Moabitess. What is Moor? The short name for Al-Moroccan, which means descendant of Moroccans, which means descendants of Moabites. So when you do the anthropology on such beings, one of the keys of the anthropology that expresses them is that they had burnished brass colored complexion of skin. Today, instead of people saying that they're Moors, they'll say melanated to avoid telling the truth, to avoid telling the truth, to avoid irritating the sensibilities, of people who swear they're being honorable, right? They even have a book on his grandmother, Ruth the Moabitess, right? And scholars know that the short name for them Moabites, some people with hair like lamb's wool and skin like burnished brass, right? The modern name is Al-Moroccan, Al-Morocc, Moor. But when you tell them that, most of them do what? They reject him in his own home because it doesn't fit their beliefs. However, short research, we're not talking about deep research. What I just said is absolutely true, indisputable. But how many of these same people that are looking for their right of claim of this land, being the quote unquote chosen ones of the bloodline, Manasseh, reject them, but yet profess that they've accepted them into their lives because of the projected narrative? I'm not talking about what you people believe, what they accept, what they don't accept. I'm talking about the component parts of facts that are obvious, but because they've been so strongly rejected, people will find a way around it to support false narratives that make people comfortable. So they'll say, melanated people. Melanin is a carbon organism. Carbon. That's what melanin is. It's a component, an organic component. It's not an identity and it's not a being. It's not a nativity. It's not a pedigree. It's an organic carbon component that has a relationship to the atmosphere of the sun, operating as a transmitter of life, a foundation, a building block of atomu, or what they call atom. Now, that's the fact. However, you know and I know on surface that's rejected. And most people, for what I've said in the last 5 minutes, would reject it. And I'm not knocking for it. I'm showing you social engineering, showing you the logistics of the component parts, right? And we're discussing the effects of the rejection of reality and acceptance of false information controlled by a narrative of those who have caused the injury that our people are seeking remedy from, and yet they're looking for him to make reparations to them in a substance that's a closed account that to this day they keep calling money. And they are putting energy into trying to get the sadistic abusers, where that sadism has its point or has its origin is unum sanctum and dum diversus and Romanus Pontifex, not hidden. And the people are calling it racism. And with the trauma that creates the necessity of quote unquote economic, social, political salvation, they're seeking an emotional approach to so-called cure, but for the sake of not hurting anyone's feelings, avoiding telling the real truth that they know will crumble the emotional world of most of these people who are attached to the schisms. But we like to think that we're so special, that if we have a good conversation about the need of unity, because it's obvious that we need it, that it will just happen on the moral cause, while the people's beliefs that they've accepted as knowledge will presuppose, prejudge, it's called prejudice, and stand before the reality that they're seeking. Come back to the simple statement that I said earlier. Know you the truth, truth will make you free. So the people are willing to accept the truth, the conditions or the response relative to cause and effect in nature that does not deal with emotion, that does not deal with beliefs, that deals with quote unquote principles in natural law that don't change, that don't pass away, but are at the foundation rule of principles that have preserved civilizations as long as they're not violated, because they don't waver. Now, once those principles are violated, whatever civilization or structured order that violates those principles, that goes unchecked, will start to deteriorate. Therefore, those who understand the workings of nature, one of the first things that they would present to a people that need unity, they will teach them what? Principles founded in nature's law, nature's God. knowing that if those rules are violated and the people keep mixing divine law and legislative law as one without understanding the variables and the descendancy of ens legis, or what you call civil law, from ecclesiastical principle, and so that they can do what? Always compare, because that's where the litigation comes in, and they remove them so that they can support their beliefs, because the principle law will always contradict once you get off that scale, because it must be blind, which means she must be like a scale, and the eyes must not see. It must go by weight, because it is what? Unbiased. So for liberty to be presented to humanity, they must blind themselves, which means move the emotions and judge only by the weight of truth. And thus you have philosophies that are built on there, that your heart would be like a featherweight on a scale. Those type of things means the same thing. That means the principle must not be violated. And I'll say this and then go ahead or continue what you're saying, Dr. J. So the boring redundancy that we've been presenting for years, for the most part, outside of our emotional outbursts here and there, are based in principles. And so to redeem a people, they must be restored in principles that they themselves have abandoned, whether by coercion, whether by deception, or whether by their own will. The effect, what is called cause and effect, also called reap what you sow. All those mean the same thing. It must be presented to you to see, and you make the determination whether you want to deal with the truth or you want to keep coddling, supporting, cultivating, justifying that which you know not to be the truth, but it makes everybody feel good and thinking you're going to get the reward. Well, you can do that with men. That's called corruption. It's also called nepotism. It's called partiality. That's what we've been suffering. You want to stop it? Start dealing with principles. I yield the floor for the moment. I didn't want to bore you with that, but I wanted to speak that out to show you, or to interject nature or divine law distinguished from ens legis or legislated law, and the capacity or the incapacity of people to separate the two and to examine them on their merit, to separate the wheat from the chaff. That's real jurisprudence. Because we've accepted color of law so many generations, that it's gotten to the point that civilization is collapsing, and out of need and necessity and the desire to survive, we start having meetings and we come together and talk about the dire need, severe need, desperate need of unity as a solution. Unity must be predicated in principles. You don't need to make them up. They're available. They've always been available. Whether you're talking about rules or laws of Ma'at, whether you talk about Hermetic law, whether you talk about constitutional principle, also known as common law, they all have the same root in ecclesiastical principle. Vary off of them, and guess what you got to do? You got to, you planted a watermelon seeds in a peach orchard, you're going to get watermelons. Thank you very much. Now you can keep on thinking that one of these days we're going to get some oranges from the watermelon seeds. It's nothing personal. It's not going to happen. And you keep on having meetings and it's not going to happen. And then you can have more meetings and it's not going to happen. And if we're serious, we don't need to make anything up. We need to study our ancient mothers and fathers who we keep claiming that we love, who we keep claiming that we respect. They're also called the ancestors. And we keep varying off of their principles and looking for something else to make this stuff work, usually adopted from the hybrid Europeans who've been governing us, who've been traumatizing us, And yet we keep looking for them to pass some legislation when the law is already established. It's even called supreme law of the land in Article 6, isn't it? Those principles by which they hold them officers, aren't they? And everything they do is contrary to all of it. And nobody challenges them on it. We keep having meetings trying to make stuff up on emotional banter and getting frustrated when it doesn't work, because it's not going to work. However, they want to have them conversations. They don't come here to the House of Reawakening Minds because it's not what we do. And I know, it's sort of like, I know it's rough for all of us, Dr. J. You know, like people say, you must be baptized and be born with a new mind. They say that because they say that. They don't mean that. And so I'm saying this to say that. We need to stop having meetings for the sake of having meetings to give the impression that we're trying to bring unity or we're trying to fix this stuff. And we need to take more time to study ourselves for real, not for fake, not for image, not just to wear a kente cloth or turban or fez or feathers, meaning that we have been unreal to each other and thought that Mother Nature tolerates this bullshit that we've been doing in the name of unity, in the name of love in our people, in the name of the melanated people, of the indigenous people of the world. And Mother Nature ain't going for none of that bullshit until we get real. I yield the floor.
I have nothing to say, but I will say this if I can. I would like to digress just a bit. And I'm surprised that my mind is holding on to what I was thinking about 15 minutes ago. But in any extent, you sure you wasn't a preacher? No, I'm sorry.
No.
Listen, this is what I wanted to share. The thought just occurred to me from a standpoint of who we are and the homogenous flow of knowing who we should be as a people. When you have a people like many of us, if you go back to the Bible, which you've been alluding to, which has all of these, laws and statutes and so forth.
Because we've been groomed.
Wait a minute, that's right. Don't stop. Don't go there. Right. When you go back to that, then you will realize that for the most part, at least it was in my mind, while I was growing up reading the Bible before I went to Bible college, and even afterwards, I never saw us aside from the man in the context of who we melanated people, Moorish people. You had Simon of Cyrene. It was like it was one so-called black man in the Bible. He carried the cross,
and that's retroactive. See, that's part of the grooming.
Okay, but you had this one man, and then you have us over here. We are aboriginal to this land that didn't know it, because we were taught otherwise, and we could never find ourselves in terms of this ancient, so-called ancient, wasn't as ancient as we think, but so-called ancient history of the Bible. We didn't see ourselves didn't realize all the time that was us, that was us.
Now,
and
let's call this.
Okay.
Keep on talking.
Since we didn't realize that we were a very large part of the narrative that was being taught, we always looked at it like, where did we come from? And like we are a mere interjection into so-called history based on a slave narrative. That
interjection, what's that called in psychology?
Social. Well, it's social.
Disassociation.
Yes, right.
Continue.
So we've been led to believe believe that we just kind of came into the picture from some dark continent through slavery, which is not the truth. The same scriptures that we've looked at and read and believed for many, many years, we're talking about people like us. They're talking about people that look like us. So when you have the story of Noah, for instance,
look like us,
that were us.
Okay,
we're us. Words. So Noah, for instance, when you see the story, if you read in the books, in the Book of Enoch, for instance, there you get a description of Noah and his birth and his father. I think it was like Lamech, who was shocked, when this baby came out, not looking like him and looking like these Anunnaki or these people that came from somewhere else to here.
Translation hybrid.
Right.
Continue.
Here was him. Here was this child born. What it seems like he was an albino. He was an
interjection. Rosemary's Baby movie. Continue.
Okay, so he was an albino. But here was somebody, he's like, this one don't look like us. We have, like you said, we'll have copper colored skin. We have, he had the woolly hair.
So now you're talking about original man, aren't you?
Right.
Continue.
So we're looking at this mutation, but he said, this looks like those other people. And so they have, for a long time, have those other people have interjected themselves and they have mixed and mingled and put their seed with us and created this. I want to call it
interjection.
You called it a both human. Well, is that the
interjection?
Go ahead.
Interjection. Those from the heaven who have come here, those, and that's a plural, not a singular,
right?
Who have interjected and who have knowingly, we know this about ourselves, interjected, i.e., bioengineered, hybriding, right, to make us in their image,
right?
And they said so,
and their likeness.
All right. Now, for us, even though we know the books have been modified, certain books have been taken out in order not to make this clear to the people for control purposes, still look at the God principle as singular. Yeah. When the God principle is plural.
And not only is it plural, but these are people who or beings from other star systems and planets that came here, who could have been no different than what SpaceX is doing now in the exploration and some no different than somebody just going to a country where the people have never been so-called civilized, but they're civilized in their own right, but they haven't been a part of the westernization of life. And all of a sudden these people come with technology. It could be planes.
Let's slow down. Let's slow down, because I want you don't lose your thought. I just want to back up, I want to move that line, move that back. Western, right? So that's contemporary.
True.
Contemporary description of the colonial Occidentals operating on our land, quote unquote, or operating in somebody else's house, creating a new narrative, deconstructing the existing narrative that would be called the Constantine book burnings, reconstructed as Christian book burnings, i.e., reconstructed or really operative with the Circle Church and Chancery as Indexus Librorum Expurgatorius, Indexus Librorum Prohibitorum, right? In these days, right? Same thing. Shadow banning, demonetization, sanctioning, blocking accounts, etc. What is that? Is that not expurgatorius and prohibitorum? Name change operations didn't. Back to the layering, but the layering was also called burying. And those buried don't know they've been buried. Why? Because they have eyes, but they can't see. They have ears, and they can't hear or refuse to hear, right? And the result is civil liter mortuus, which is the civil description of spiritual blindness, which is called dead in the view of the law, but not physically dead. But yet that's operative, isn't it? Isn't that operative? And so the people, in order to fix their social structure, restore, quote unquote, broken families, because remember, the collective families make up the nation. So if the families are broken, can the nation be alive? Or is the nation held as dead? So now you got the civil liter mortuus that expresses it in the social order, don't you? One of those nom de guerre is called Black people. That's a known factor. Known factor. And yet people keep on projecting it, don't they? Then they accuse the hybrid of doing it. We've adopted the weapons, is what I'm saying, Dr. J. And what I'm also saying is that the truth or the cure has been brought, but the people rejected it. But many of them don't know they rejected it. Why? Because they thought that the cure was a new belief countering their beliefs. Not that the information wasn't there, but they thought it was a religious belief, knowing that, religion has been used to do what? To enslave our people. So when, as an example, because I'm giving examples, when Sheik Sharif Abdul Ali brought the issue of nationalization to us, the people thought it was a challenge against their belief systems and listened to it, but rejected it. But yet that's the cure. That's part of the cure. Because the issue of standing in all arguments is vital to any argument of a state. But because we're not taught lawful standing or ecclesiastical principle, we thought it was just some priesthood that used it for themselves that had nothing to do with us and has everything to do with us. And, one of the things that I've always said, Dr. J, and I'll say because I was looking at this as we were, talking earlier today, because you were running around, I was running around, right? And we're trying to cobble something together. But all we need to do is really talk with current events and talk about what we were talking about, because that's what's really happening. No different than the people need to know is that they're getting ready to put a tax on the people, enforce a tax on the people now that's pretty much going to break these people's back. Not coming, they're working on it right now. And even when we talked about, the last time we talked, Dr. J, the immigration issue, right? They're going to have these people getting mad at the people who are coming in, who are immigrants, rather than recognize that the immigration issue is being weaponized. Already, what they're talking about in the political, the halls of the politics right now, is they're discovering that they already have, quote unquote, what they call, but we know how to look at this properly though. Undocumented immigrants already working in chicken factories and other parts of industry and haven't made it public. And already closing down or planning to close down certain established manufacturing venues that have run their course. And some of them that are left, they're actually stacking them with persons that they call undocumented already, so that when the people who, quote unquote, in these coming weeks and months lose their jobs and start arguing, etc., there's no jobs for them to go to. And then when it becomes, untenable, and they start demonstrating in the streets, etc., they already have rules in order to start, imprisoning these people for confusion, not unlike that the secret societies set up that so-called January the 6th thing in order to keep Trump out of office. Same thing. Now, if we don't intelligently, with intelligence and with knowledge, start coming together to govern our own affairs intelligently, not emotion, doesn't cause and effect kind of guarantee that we will be in the rubble of destruction. That's already there, and it's not opinion. It's already in the workings. It's not coming. The fact that many of our people, by trained habit, have not been dealing with geopolitics, they don't see it coming. They don't know it's here. And others who see it coming, saw it coming, know it's here, are in denial, so they won't deal with it as a subject matter, thinking that it doesn't affect them or won't affect them as long as they have strong beliefs. Notice how that engineering works? So what is the reality? they will be the rubble by their own hand, because they will be guiding themselves by beliefs and not by facts or reality. The fact that we approach it emotionally in nature doesn't change that, does it? Does nature, because you pray more than anyone else, save you because you jump off the top of the Empire State Building without a parachute? And the way you land on the ground will be different from this other person that has less belief than you. One of the things that they're doing right now to comfort the people, they're throwing out this message that they call soft landing. The politicians are using that now. Why do they keep saying soft landing? Respond to that, Dr. J. What do you?
I have no idea. I have no
The
idea.
economics, they keep making this statement. We're in for a soft landing. They're mentally preparing the people for the collapse that's already taken place. And so they're telling the people who have steeped themselves in beliefs, they know it's crashing, but we're going to have a soft landing. And it's also what you call mundane in this statement, because a lot of politicians are saying that right now. But those who really understand the social engineering would have already been preparing themselves already years ago, starting to buy silver, not because the governing body won't try to steal that from you, but because the same silver that costs, say when we bought them coins, was for the average coin, 25, 30 Federal Reserve notes can go up in the near future as far as 3,000 notes in value. However, do you think in the coming weeks that it's going to be available to the average person that we've been telling for 5-10 years to get it? I suggest for those who don't understand what I'm saying right now, and this is just one aspect. That's not, don't look at it as some saving grace. I'm just using this as an example. See if you can get it. Just try to get it, and you'll start seeing that it's already, that a lot of these houses are going to be what? Absent of inventory, conveniently. And that's just an aspect. However, that's not a saving grace. I'm just telling you that's an aspect for those who doubt what we've been telling them. And then what's coming next? They're going to find cause or reason to injure the people even more. So they're going to do legislations to more steal the rights of the people and suppress them. Why? And they're going to misrepresent what's really going on so that the people will blame immigrants for the breakdown of all your major cities. As we told people before, how many people still don't recognize that what they're seeing in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Memphis are all socially engineered, not accidental? How many of you who are listening, say 30 years ago, were in the Atlanta area, Atlanta, Georgia Republic area, 30 years ago, and look at the family life, look at the fundamental structures, and then compare it to now? And find many people who were even born in that area were used to the strong family structures, the beautiful areas of what you call harmonics in the communities, would move away from there now. It is totally debased. Now that's the truth, because most people, when we're part of things, we don't want to admit that the areas that we're in are, totally corrupted. Same thing with San Francisco. How many people know that many of your first line hotels and owners, hedge funds operators in San Francisco have been selling office buildings for $1 in order to save the hedge funds that they're administrating or that they're managing from collapsing? And that's just one aspect. How many of you in the area of Khalifa's land, called California, are aware that the whole area that is from a international economic perspective was around number 8 relative to nation states in actual economic generation years ago, and right now is getting ready to collapse, well on its way. How many of you are used to going to the land of Nod that we call New York? And remember the hustle and bustle and the busyness of the businesses there. Recognize the stark contrast distinguished from, say, even 20 years ago. And it's on the verge of collapse. And all your major cities are showing the same signs, and that it's not accidental, it's all engineered. However, if the people themselves aren't on a course intelligently of coming together in unity outside of the jurisdiction of the United States corporation, company, trustees, and FOFers, that they will, by plan already, be part of the rubble, the dross, the waste, and tossed away, and will not be allowed to interfere with the military operations under any guise of marching and praying away the effect of cause that they've been experiencing, and they will not meet the so-called obsolete goals that have been presented that kept us busy for years, that were already obsolete when they were given to you as a goal of measure. However, saying that, I say this again, we really need unity, but the bonds that create unity are principles preserved by agreement of all, because they don't change or they don't pass away, and they're not laden with emotion. They're laden with divine law, having nothing to do with belief systems whatsoever. You have the floor, Dr. J.
Well, to end on unity and just to bring, I'm not going back to where I was. I'm just going to say that one of the reasons why this year's conference, which of course is coming up in April, and we are still, we hope that everyone who can will attend the conference. We have a diverse group. And when I say diverse, I mean from a standpoint of what it is they
organizationally, for the most part, diverse. Organizationally diverse.
Yeah. So what they present, oftentimes in some cases, folks may say, well, they are on different, they're coming from different perspectives, but that's what we need. We need all of these perspectives to be at the table or be at the same place at the same time. So this year, April 26th through 28th, we want everybody who can and will to come and be part of our Spring into Action 2024 gathering. And our confirmed speakers this year are Empress Chakra, Reverend Ningrit. She's our keynote. We're gonna let the divine feminine have the preeminence. We're gonna tie Grand Sheik down and let him do a smaller part than he does, so that we can let the divine feminine, as well as the Grand Sheik, Brother Abdullah El Talib Mosi Bey, Consul General Lamont Maurice L., Brother Yakuba J. Rome L., awesome civics teacher, from a standpoint of holistic presentations, Brother El Hagan from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Dr. Dave Levy Bay, Sister Beverly L., and yours truly. We are all holistic practitioners, and we want you to come out and be part of what we're calling Spring into Action, but it really has to do with unity. It really has much to do with unity. We want you to go to our website, House of Reawakening Minds, .com, and you can register right there on the website. And I know we haven't put any big flyers up, but it's on the website. I'm letting you know who our keynotes are or who our presenters are, and there may be some more.
And you know what, the thing that needs to be interjected, Dr. G?
What's that?
And it's another reason why, you're presenting this conference to the people. It's because the people need to know that all of them are aspects of the same jewel. The fact that we perceived them to be separate
Right.
is the schism.
Mm-hmm.
When you recognize, because this is back to what I say, and I'm saying again, when people really do the research, they understand a lot of these things are lost aspects of our culture. They're not diverse in the sense that we've looked at them as not belonging. It's sort of like, the art of the social control, where the priests that created what is known as sectalism.
I want to respond to this.
The sectalism is the same as what you call sex or schism.
So JM says, does not the different points of view muddy the water? Absolutely not. I don't believe that any one of us, none of us, has the complete and total answer. And everybody has something that they can bring. And not even if, and perhaps when we come together, there may be some changes that folks make based on being able to sit down and reason together.
That's the whole point.
We have to be able to sit down and reason together.
Because, this is what it is. And I understand, where it says, the different points of view muddy the water. It muddies the water for people who are caught in beliefs and don't look at the logistics of component parts, and thus reject this is why, like, even when you have meetings, right? Why do you have what you call structured panels in government called today, we call it, say, Majlis, right? Or you have circle of mothers, right? In our culture, right? And you have a circle of mothers and sons. That's part of the culture. But if people don't know the culture, they don't know that. And if they see the operations of some people in Great Hill, as an example, they don't know the culture. They assume that's something different. No, that's the culture. It's part of the matriarchy. But if they don't know, like people, this is what you discover, Dr. J. You'll hear a lot of people talking about the matriarchy, right? Right?
Yes.
And yet, if you ask them to write down a general description of function and structure of the matriarchy operative government of ancient days, most of them will start talking from a perspective of male and female competition. Mm-hmm. They'll not talk anything about the Sayaraha, circle of mothers and sons, right? Majlis, things that are different names that they're not familiar with, but attest to the same thing. Or even the operative in the political realm of Elam Bay, operative function, right? And why, for the most part, in the culture, the mothers are ill and the sons are bays. And yet we both use those titles. But if you know the culture, you already know the matriarchy, if you get the point. And so because we've been groomed under the operations or the schism operations of the hybrid Europeans under the unum sanctum, we're mixing the values. And so logically it muddies the water, yes, which is part of the schism operations, because we, by training, right, and it's not everyone, but people are less conscious, are what? Psychologically always trying to protect their beliefs until shown comparative information that changes their view based on examination. So you have to bring the diversity together with people with reasoning minds who are willing, because it's still going back to will, to deal with logistical realities so that they can do what? Clean up or discard things that are founded to be flawed or untrue, that they assumed to be true, but upon quote unquote discovery to be invalid or untrue. Now you have reason to do what? To discard and to restore with more fact in order to do what? That the machinery of the social structure starts to work properly. Yeah. Not unlike, like a lot of times when we're talking about the economics, right? As I'm being specific to show you, because we're dealing with social engineering, right? If the people who are not aware, and it's mostly most of the youth and most of the adults who have been trained under, the animal husbandry in these recent generations. If you show them as an example, when we tell them why, just for an exercise, just look at some of the conversations that take place on the House of Representatives. And so we gave them on the flash drive as an example, right? U.S. bankruptcy, right? And as an example, because it's the only one example, Charles Khan's speech on the House of Representatives, right, on the U.S. bankruptcy. So what comes out in the record? Currency is not money. Federal Reserve notes are not money, right? They're blank checks written on a closed account. Only gold and silver is the money. Then go to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. No state can emit any bills of credit. What has happened to the people? The people are living off of bills of credit and not money, to the point that people worked all their lives and they're in debt right now and still don't understand how they got there. But yet they're going to have what you call an emotional conversation about people who have the facts relative to people who don't have the facts, who're still thinking they're going to get reparations with Federal Reserve notes, and have meetings and are spending energies and people's lives on fiction, hoping to achieve something that's already dead because they believe it to be real. And that energy is wasted because they're not dealing with the reality, with the restoration of the estates that are locked in the banking system under the Sister QV trust operations, whether with the CUSIC number or the birth certificate or the marriage certificate, etc., or the chattel bonds and the Treasury, U.S. Treasuries, all of which are dying because the world is no longer buying them, and the people don't understand that you're getting ready to have a crash feedback loop, and we're not going to be able to. Not going to have the option, as you might say, to whether we believe or not. Our families will be absolutely destroyed, and they're already prepared to protect themselves to kill the people off, which is also why all the so-called viruses that keep on showing up incrementally are patented before they even issued, and that's available anyway.
Okay.
I yield the floor.
He get ready to start again, y'all. We're getting ready, we past time to go, but I do want to acknowledge Sister L. Bay, whose brother transitioned, I think a couple of days ago, and it was unexpected.
James Warren Bay.
Also, yeah, Brother James Warren Bay. But I wanted to acknowledge her because she's in the chat. We send our condolences to you and to your family. Let me see. I'm not going to keep you all any longer, but I do want to say to anybody that is in the area of where House of Reawakening Minds is over this weekend, we will be celebrating my 69th on Sunday. My 69th, we're calling it an Earth Day Bash. We're having a day party. And if you're anywhere in this area, it starts at 4 p.m. We're going to have a great time. And we're going to be sampling products from my new 420 dispensary. Of course, people have to sign a waiver.
Yes.
For those who want to, you don't have to. We'll have stuff that doesn't have stuff in it, but we want you to come out and be a part on the Sunday, the 17th. Yours truly will see my 69th revolution around the sun.
Yes.
And
don't try to fly, Dr. G.
It sure do, y'all. So we invite you to come out and be part of that. And hey. Yeah, so we thank you, and we are going to go because I have a very, 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 very busy day tomorrow, leading up to to Sunday. And again, we thank you, and until next time, we're gonna be signing off. Grand Sheik, I guess we have to continue this one. There was somebody who had a comment. I don't want to go into it right now because I gotta go. Not that I don't want to address it, because I really do. I think I highlighted it, and I just started. Maybe that's not it. No, it was one that's where somebody said that you said not to dance with the enemy or the colonizers or the
trading with the enemy.
Well, they were basically saying that some of who we are having in April are promoting that dance, whatever the dance is, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly who they're talking about, and I'm not even going to speculate. I'm just going to say, we need to come together, and especially if these people have platforms and all of them are basically in front of large groups of people. So let's see what we can come out of this with from a standpoint of being on the same page.
People need to see things. See, one of the most dangerous things.
We're not starting again.
Yeah, what I'm saying, one of the most dangerous things, right, is what you call suppressing free speech.
Yeah.
Because you need to examine things to make the discernment.
Yeah.
See, the discernment, that's why whoever controls the narrative with the schism has created this situation that we're rightfully critiquing.
Right. So we thank you. We're not going to, like I said, we will pick this up the next. And let me say, the way we get along, I would just, can I say this? Because apparently on your solar return, 2 days after your solar return, which was in February, we were honoring you online, and Empress Chakra Rarebird, apparently Ningrat, was on Young Elder show, and she said that she had to go because she needed to come on and give you greetings to Dr. G's husband,
which I appreciate.
No, we don't appreciate that part. Yeah. She mistakenly thought that we were married, and some of it's come to me like we didn't know you were married. I didn't know you were married. I'm not. We're not married to each other. We are big brother, little sister, right? And it's all love.
Divinely come together to get some work done. And guess what? From diverse points of view, to examine logistical information, to come to common ground, not from emotion, but from establishing facts.
Yeah,
that's what creates the harmony. Truth creates the unity. It's no secret. Truth creates unity.
He's starting to get young, but listen, please. Again, we love you. Until next time, not sure, probably be on Tuesday. Maybe I'll say what I was going to say on Tuesday. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just supporting Cass on Friday. So we thank you so much for being here with us.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living the lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening.